On October 7, 2023, Hamas invaded Israel in an onslaught of murder and RAPE. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that on YouTube without my video being taken off air, but you know what I just said. An onslaught that Hamas called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. What is Al-Aqsa? Al-Aqsa is one of two major buildings that sits on Jerusalem's Temple Mount. And it is named after a story or a legend in Islam. It's touched upon a little bit in the Quran, but greatly embellished by later tradition, called the night journey. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But as the Muslims from the Gaza Strip, which was comprised of both professional terrorists, Hamas fighters, as well as thousands of Gazan civilians that came in their footsteps to contribute to the pillaging and the violence. As these Gazans were invading Israel, many of them were quoted as saying to one another a famous hadith, which is an oral tradition in Islam. That's what the word hadith means. O Muslim, the last day, or the day of redemption, we can say, will not come till the rock and the tree cry out, O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him. This is a very widely known hadith, and millions of Muslims have memorized it, and they know it by heart, just as you know certain verses from the Bible that you put on your refrigerator to memorize. It is a well-known hadith referring to the final days or the end of the age. And according to that hadith that I just quoted, the day of redemption, of world redemption, as well as Islamic victory, its final victory, can't come till the Jews are vanquished. And you can tell from the verse that I just quoted, it's genocidal. Okay, it's basically saying that the day of redemption can't come till the Jews who resist Islam are wiped off the face of the earth. Now, I'm going to tell you, folks, that unless you understand the things that I'm going to share with you over the next 2 episodes, you can't make sense of the end times. And this is the 4th episode of the series, Making Sense of the End Times. And I'm also going to tell you that not only can you not understand the end times, okay, that time referred to by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that is referring to the end of the age, I'm telling you that you can't understand world events from even a secular point of view unless you understand the Islamic theological impetus or catalyst behind their hatred and war against Israel. Now, I started to touch upon this in the last episode when we covered the subject of Islam's replacement theology and Islam's triumphalism over Christianity and Judaism. And we're going to mention that again in concluding remarks after the next couple episodes before I get into the Bible itself. But remember, I'm using a few episodes here to set the stage and to develop the cast of characters. As I introduce this series, you can't approach this subject without understanding all the various cast of characters that are going to come onto the stage of the events mentioned in the Bible. So, in this episode, this is the first of 2 episodes. It's going to deal with Islam's eschatology, or Islam's understanding of the end times. But you can't understand Islam's view of the end times unless we come to an understanding or knowledge of Islam's past, specifically in Jerusalem. Now, I'm going to pick up where I left off in the last episode, which is in the year 638, Islam, where the armies of Islam flood. Okay, now here it's interesting. I just referred to Hamas's operation on October 7. They name it Al-Aqsa Flood after one of the main buildings on the Temple Mount. Well, here, Islam's first flood into the Holy Land was in the year 638 AD. And I told you that the Caliph, or a successor to Muhammad, Omar, arrives to the gates of Jerusalem, and without a battle, the most senior figure of the Christian population in the country, the Bishop Sophronius, opens the gates of Jerusalem to Omar and simply lets him in. And as he enters the city without a fight and accepts surrender terms from the Christians, the first place that the conquering caliph wishes to visit is the Temple Mount, the famous Temple Mount of the Jews. And he's conducted there by his most senior assistant, a Jewish convert to Islam, whose name is Ka'b el-Abhar. And Ka'b takes Omar to the Temple Mount, and during the visit, he points to a pile of trash, and he says to the Caliph Omar, "Omar, do you see that trash dump? That's a Christian trash dump on the remains of the Jewish temples." And Omar is absolutely floored, for the Muslims look at Solomon as a prophet, not just as an ancient king. They call him Nebi Suleiman. And Omar is indignant. He can't believe that the Christians are profaning the site of Solomon's temple with a trash dump. And Omar immediately orders that the trash dump be removed forthright. And according to tradition, Omar lends a helping hand himself. He gets down on his hands and knees and helps to remove the trash. Okay? Now, not only does Omar remove the trash and thus, in a sense, redeems or re-sanctifies the site of the previous Jewish temples, but he invites the Jewish people back to Jerusalem, both to visit as well as to ultimately resettle the city. Now, as you recall, I mentioned in the last couple episodes that beginning with the Romans following their third and final victory over the Jews in 136 AD, not only did the Romans change the name of the country from Judea, which means land of the Jews, to Palestina, which means land of the Philistines, but the Romans expelled the Jews on pain of death from Jerusalem and its immediate surroundings, probably including Bethlehem too, which is very nearby, okay, only 5 or 7 miles away from Jerusalem. And they are forbidden to visit on pain of death. The tradition or this decree is continued by the Christian Byzantine Empire that only allows the Jews to return to the outskirts of the city, to the Mount of Olives, once a year on the 9th of Av to commemorate the destruction of our previous 2 temples. The Christians put the trash dump, if you recall from the last episode, on the site of Solomon's temple in order to add salt to the wounds of this reversal of Jewish fortunes beginning in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple by the Romans and its replacement, and the replacement of the Jews as God's chosen people by the Christian church. And that theology reigned until our own day, basically up until the Holocaust. Only after the Holocaust do we start to see parts of Christianity, especially those churches that postdate the Holocaust, for instance, Calvary Chapel, okay, the movement Calvary Chapel here in the United States, okay? After the Holocaust and Israel's rebirth, only then do we really start to see a mass movement among Christians to repeal or to revisit or to rethink this theology called replacement theology. The Christians of Jerusalem, or let's say the Christian rulers, allow the Jews, as I said, once a year to grieve or to mourn and to feel the salt being rubbed in their wounds of having lost the temple and our status as the chosen people. But the Muslim conquerors under Omar bring about another reversal of trends and invite the Jews to return to the city and to re-inhabit the city. And this causes an awakening, as you can imagine, of Jewish messianic fervor. The Jews look to the Muslims as their deliverers from Christian persecution and from the Christian ban of the Jews from Jerusalem. They see the Muslims as, wow, a sort of savior here, reversing this decree and allowing the Jews to return. And this messianic fervor even includes this Jewish belief or anticipation that the Muslims are going to allow the Jewish people to rebuild or restore the temple and Jewish worship on the Temple Mount. Now, the Muslims would never do that. They would never allow the rebuilding of the Jewish temple. Instead, the Muslims would erect in the year 692 AD a building that stands to this very day, known as the Dome of the Rock, one of the oldest buildings in the world that still exists, as well as probably the oldest building in the Islamic world, if I had to guess. Okay, I'm just thinking this on the top of my head here. The Muslims build the Dome of the Rock on the site of the Holy of Holies of the previous Jewish temple in the year 692 AD. And they build it for the following reasons. And I'm going to go through all these reasons because all these reasons that they build it touch upon what will become Islam's eschatology. First reason why the Dome of the Rock is built is to commemorate a story that's briefly spoken of in a single verse in the Quran known as the night journey. And I'm now going to read to you that verse from the Quran. It's Surah 17. It's a chapter in the Quran known as Al-Isra. Glory be to the one who took his servant by night from the sacred mosque to the farthest mosque, whose surroundings we have blessed, so that we may show him some of our signs. Indeed, he alone is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. In that single verse is all that the Quran has to say about this story that is called the night journey. Muhammad's not even mentioned by name here. He's referred to as God's servant, whom God took from this sacred mosque, which is the most holy place in Islam, today's Kaaba in Mecca. Okay, it's also not mentioned by name here, but it's strongly inferred by the term sacred mosque. And Muhammad, the servant of God, is taken from that sacred mosque in Mecca. Again, all of this just being inferred to the furthest mosque. That's called in Arabic Al-Aqsa. Okay, and this is where the story takes a very interesting turn. Now, that's all the Quran has to say about the story, but later traditions, which again, and I used this word at the beginning of this teaching, hadith. Hadith is an oral tradition. It's usually an oral tradition that's attributed to one of Muhammad's companions or peers, that original generation of Muslims. Those that were closest to Muhammad are said to have said or to put into circulation certain traditions concerning Muhammad himself, concerning his life, concerning questions that were brought to Muhammad about certain things such as the end times, okay? The collection of all these, we call them hadiths. Hadith, again, the oral traditions of Islam. So the Quran only touches very briefly and obliquely, doesn't even mention the names of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is never mentioned in the Quran, not even once, okay? Doesn't even mention here by name Muhammad, doesn't even mention here by name Mecca, okay? All these things are strictly referred to obliquely in the Quran in this verse, but later hadiths add color, add detail, so that the tradition would take on a fuller body. And that is this: the tradition said that in the story, the angel Gabriel descended to earth with a horse named Barak. This is a very mythical looking horse, a horse that has wings of an eagle, the face of a human. And Barak is even represented as having the face of a woman, not just a human, but the face of a woman. And Gabriel with Barak encounters Muhammad, who's resting just by the Kaaba there in Mecca. And Gabriel orders Muhammad to mount Barak, who in an instant conducts Muhammad to this place that the verse in the Quran refers to as Al-Aqsa, the farthest away place, or the furthest away mosque. When he arrives to Al-Aqsa, he dismounts Barak. He hitches Barak to a hitching post of sorts. That's important, and I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. And then Muhammad is greeted by former saints of the past, Old Testament and New Testament saints, from Abraham to Moses to Jesus. They meet him there at this place called Al-Aqsa, where he leads them in prayer. And then shortly thereafter, Muhammad ascends to heaven in a story reminiscent of Jacob's ladder from the Bible. And along the way, he meets these same Old and New Testament saints that he had just prayed with. He meets them along his ascent to heaven, where he's told by Allah that the Muslims need to pray. I'll say 50 times. Okay, I've heard renditions of this story that say 5,000 times, but most traditions say 50 times. And as he's returning to earth after having been given this order that the Muslims are to pray 50 times a day, Moses encounters Muhammad on his way back to earth and says, listen, that's not practical. Muhammad, it's not practical that people pray 50 times a day. They'll have no time to be productive in any other pursuit. Go back and negotiate this down. So Muhammad returns to Allah, who is then willing to go down to 5 times a day, each time representing a previous 10 times. Therefore, the 50 times of prayer is negotiated down to 5 times a day. And therefore, it's in this story of the night journey at this place called Al-Aqsa, or what the Quran calls the furthest away mosque. That's what Al-Aqsa means. That the Muslims receive their tradition that they're to pray 5 times a day. Now, by the time the Dome of the Rock is built in 692 AD, the tradition has it that Jerusalem's Temple Mount is this place that the Quran and tradition calls Al-Aqsa, the furthest away mosque from Mecca. And this tradition has it that Muhammad dismounted from the horse, Buraq, and he hitches the horse to an iron ring sticking out of what's called today the Western Wall. Okay, all of you have been to Jerusalem with me or with others have visited the Western Wall being a surviving wall of Herod's Temple Mount. But Islam's tradition has it that Muhammad tied the horse Buraq, who conveyed him from Mecca to Al-Aqsa, okay, the furthest away mosque in the story of the night journey, that he hitches his horse to an iron ring sticking out of the Western Wall, and that he ascends to heaven from a rock now encased in the building known as the Dome of the Rock. It's from the rock that he ascends to heaven and has that revelation from God concerning the Muslims praying 5 times a day. Now, this is important. This dovetails now with the Jews. Why? Because many of us believe that at one time, the Ark of the Covenant that sat in the Holy of Holies of Solomon's temple stood on that same rock, which now gets into the second reason why the Dome of the Rock was built. Okay, the first being to commemorate Muhammad's night journey and sanctifying the spot that they believe from which he ascended to heaven on the night journey. Okay, the second reason, and it dovetails with what I just said, was because the site was also the site at one time of Solomon's temple, and that rock likely was in the Holy of Holies. Now, what do I base that on? Well, many years ago, when I would take tour groups to the Temple Mount, to the area of the Dome of the Rock, there'd be these Muslim kids selling postcards. And I would always buy for $1 or $2 this deck of postcards, because there was a single postcard in the deck of postcards that I found really relevant and that I needed to show my tour groups, which was a photograph of the very rock that I'm talking about, that central boulder within the Dome of the Rock. And why is this important, this picture? Because the picture was taken from a camera that was hung from the ceiling of the Dome of the Rock, looking down onto the rock itself. And if you look carefully at the picture, there's a rectangle incised on the rock, which is today underneath the Dome of the Rock. And that rectangle that's incised on the rock is the exact shape and size in cubic measurements of the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, the Ark that one time sat in the Holy of Holies. And this has caused some people, including a couple leading archaeologists who have observed this rectangular shape that's carved out on top of the rock is likely the base on which sat one time the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, that famous golden Ark of the Covenant with the two poles, on top of which were the cherubim, between which was the mercy seat on which Yahweh himself is imagined to have sat in judgment or in presence at least once a year on the Jewish Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. This is very important stuff. Now, the Muslims, if you recall, when they entered Jerusalem with Omar and were taken to the Dome of the Rock, and he was led on tour by his most senior official, a Jewish convert to Islam, he's told, look, that Christian trash dump was once the site of the Jewish temples. And for the Muslims, Solomon is Nebi Suleiman, a prophet, not just a previous king. So the Dome of the Rock is built to sanctify the spot of what was Solomon's temple so that the Christians never profane it again with a trash dump. And as an interesting aside to all this, the Muslims they seek, this is amazing, they seek descendants of the Jewish priests that served in Herod's temple centuries before. They search for the descendants of these priests and hire them to serve in the Dome of the Rock 3 times a week. And what do they do in their services in the Dome of the Rock? These Jewish hirelings, okay, these Jews that are hired as functionaries in the Dome of the Rock in its earliest years as a Muslim shrine on the Temple Mount, they're hired 3 days a week to anoint this rock that I just mentioned as being the place from which Muhammad ascends to heaven, as well as likely the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant. These Jewish descendants of the priests are hired to anoint that spot with a special oil whose formula is reminiscent to the formula that was commanded of Moses to make as a special anointing oil in the previous Jewish temples. This is amazing stuff. And by the way, very few people know the stuff that I'm sharing with you. Now, Steve, how do you know the stuff that you're sharing with us? Well, I studied it extensively as a student in school and wrote a seminar paper about it. And I'm not boasting, but that seminar paper was given a 100, okay? I did tremendous amount of research on this topic, which is also one of the reasons why I haven't made a video in about 11 days, because I've spent the last week at least revisiting this stuff that I spent some time researching years ago in school, okay? But this is a second reason why the Dome of the Rock was built that very few people know about, and that is to commemorate the place of Solomon's temple, and its first employees, if you will, were descendants of Jewish priests from Herod's temple, who the Muslims hired to anoint the rock that's sacred to both Jews and Muslims. Jews, because it may not only be the place on which the Ark of the Covenant once rested, but it's also believed to be the rock or altar on which Abraham bound Isaac and almost sacrificed him. So you see the dovetailing of all these traditions on this one spot, this one rock on the Jewish Temple Mount. And these Jews who were descendants of Herod's priests were hired to anoint that rock 3 times a week with a special oil reminiscent of the oil commanded by Moses that was used in the previous 2 temples. And now the third reason why the Dome of the Rock was built, and this is an amazing thing, and again, most people don't know this stuff, and I would say most Muslims don't even know this third reason, which I'm going to share, which is the Dome of the Rock was built by the Caliph Abdul Malik in 692 to divert the Hajj from Mecca to Jerusalem. Now, for those of you that aren't Muslim, you may know, and if you don't, I'm going to share it with you right now, that the Muslims are required to go on Hajj to Mecca. And they're supposed to go there during the holy month of the Hajj, okay? And they're to go around the Mecca to perambulate or to walk around that rock, which they believe, and many allege, is a meteor, okay, a meteor that fell from heaven, or was given according to tradition to Adam, okay, and found its resting place there at the Kaaba in Mecca. They perambulate. They're supposed to go around that 7 times. But the Caliph Abdul Malik desired to divert that tradition from Mecca to Jerusalem. Why? Because in 692 AD, the Muslim world is already slightly split between 2 rival claimants to the head of Islam, or to the leadership of Islam. The one, Abdul Malik, who's the leader of the Umayyad regime based in Damascus, near Jerusalem. Okay, Damascus, of course, is not far from Jerusalem, as opposed to the rival claimant who's situated in Mecca, or based in Mecca, a guy by the name of Abu Zubayr. And this is a story very reminiscent to the story in the Bible when the kingdom of Israel splits in 2. The kingdom of Israel to the north versus the kingdom of Judah in the south. And we're told in the Bible that the king of Israel to the north, named Jeroboam, is afraid that when his subjects go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem in the rival kingdom, Judah, to the south, that the hearts of the pilgrims coming from that northern kingdom of Israel will be awakened to the glorious path of a united Israel being led by the Davidic monarch. And he's afraid that their hearts will be wedded to his rival in Jerusalem, and therefore Jeroboam sets up rival altars within his domain, one in Bethel, the other being in Dan. And some of you have been to the site of Dan with me to see the altar of Jeroboam. Thus, Jeroboam establishes a rival temple, if you will, okay, or a rival holy site to the one in Jerusalem, fearing that when his subjects go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem, it will kindle a loyalty, or rekindle a loyalty to the Davidic dynasty in the south, and he wants to prevent that. Well, the Caliph Abdul Malik does the exact same thing. Okay, he wishes to divert the Hajj from Mecca, where a rival leader has dominion, to his own dominion in Jerusalem, Jerusalem being within the territory of Abdul Malik's Umayyad dynasty or empire, situated in Damascus. And I'm just going to quickly read you a verse that talks about this in Muslim tradition. Abdul Malik prevented the people of Syria, or Sham in Arabic, from the Hajj. And this is because Ibn al-Zubayr was taking the Pledge of Allegiance from the pilgrims. That's the rival leader of Islam in Mecca. Abdul Malik had found out about this, and he prevented them from setting out to Mecca. Then he built a Dome of the Rock and suspended silk curtains on it and appointed servants for it, and told the people to revolve around it like they revolve around the Kaaba in Mecca. And so it was during the rule of the Umayyads. So, what's the third reason that the Dome of the Rock was built? It was built by the leader of the Umayyads in Damascus to prevent his subjects living in the area of Syria from going on the pilgrimage south to what today is Saudi Arabia, to Mecca, where a rival leader was ruling. And now the fourth reason, and the final reason I'm going to give you, that the Dome of the Rock was built. And this is important because this will help us to understand the futurism of Islam, the eschatology of Islam concerning the final days that I'm going to cover in the next episode. So, what's the fourth reason why the Dome of the Rock was built? Well, as part of its polemic or debate, its vitriolic debate with Christianity concerning the deity of Jesus Christ. And how do I know that that's one of the reasons why the Dome of the Rock was built? Well, because within and without the Dome of the Rock are many inscriptions that refer to this Islamic polemic. And when I say the word polemic, it comes from the Greek word polemos, which means war. Okay, when we refer to polemics, we're referring to an intense debate here between individuals or groups of people. And within and without the Dome of the Rock are several inscriptions that refer to this polemic between Islam and Christianity referring the deity of Jesus. Now, I'm going to read to you some of these inscriptions because they're crucial for your understanding about what Islam believes concerning Jesus, both his previous coming as well, or at least I'm going to talk about that in the next video, what they believe about his second coming. But for now, Jesus' first coming. It's very important because it is going to be crucial to understanding the end times according to Islam. So let me read to you a few of these verses that are inscribed in and around the Dome of the Rock. Okay, I'm first going to go over some of the inscriptions inside the Dome of the Rock, inside this octagonal dome. Okay, so here's the first one. This is really interesting. O people of the book. Now, when the Muslims refer to the people of the book, they're referring to Jews and Christians. Please refer to my last episode, which mentions how the Muslims, they admit that we, the Jews and Christians, were one-time people who God revealed his word to, although we perverted it. And the Quran came to correct that perversion and set things straight again. Okay, so when Islam refers to the people of the book, they're referring to Jews, to Christians, or to both. Here they're referring to the Christians. O people of the book, do not exaggerate in your religion, nor utter aught concerning God save the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was only a messenger of God, and his word which he conveyed unto Mary, and the Spirit from him. So believe in God and his messengers, and say not three, cease. Okay, so here in this particular inscription that I just read, one of many, it's taking on the Trinity. Okay, it's referring to the Christians. It's telling them, don't exaggerate your claims about Jesus. Do not exaggerate in your religion. And then it says, say not three, cease. In other words, cease from all this belief in the Trinity. So here this verse, or this inscription, within the Dome of the Rock, the first of several that I'm going to share with you, takes on the Christian Trinity and basically shoots it down. Okay, here's a second verse from within the Dome of the Rock. It is better for you. God is only one God. Far be it removed from his transcendent majesty that he should have a son. His is all that is in the heavens and all that is in the earth, and God is sufficient as defender. The Messiah will never scorn to be a servant unto God, nor will the favored angels. Whoso scorneth his service and is proud, all such will he assemble unto him. O God, bless your messenger and your servant Jesus. Okay, so what's the polemic? What's the key clause in that inscription? The part that just says here, far be it removed from his transcendent majesty that he should have a son. Allah has no son. And this will be repeated in one of the most famous inscriptions on the outside of the Dome of the Rock, towards the top of the dome. Here, another section, okay, or another inscription of things that are written within the Dome of the Rock. Your servant Jesus, son of Mary, peace be unto him the day that he was born, and the day that he dies, and the day that he shall be raised alive. Such was Jesus, son of Mary, a statement of the truth concerning which they doubted. It befitteth not the majesty of God, that he should take unto himself a son. Glory unto him. So again, a denunciation of the Christian belief that Jesus is the Son of God. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the outside of the Dome of the Rock, that part that we're all able to see when we visit as tourists. Today's non-Muslims were not allowed to enter within the Dome of the Rock, and that's the case since the year 2000, when what's called the Second Intifada broke out between the Palestinians and Israel. But we can still see these inscriptions on the outside of the Dome of the Rock. As visitors to the Temple Mount, even today, okay, we're all able to at least access the outside of the Temple Mount. So here are some verses or some inscriptions that are written in calligraphy in Arabic around the outside octagon of the Dome of the Rock. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. There is no God but Allah. He's the one. He has no associate. Say, he is the God, he is the one, God the eternally besought of all. He begetteth not, nor was begotten, and there is none comparable unto him. Muhammad is the messenger of God, the blessing of God be on him. So again, Islam's assertion that Jesus is not the Son of God. Okay, God does not beget, nor is God begotten, according to the passage that I just read from the Dome. Okay, and I'll wrap it up here with just a couple more words. God, who hath not taken unto himself a son, and who hath no partner in the sovereignty, nor hath he any protecting friend through dependence, and magnify him with all magnificence. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. The blessing of God be on him and the angels and his prophets, and peace be unto him. And may God have mercy in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. There is no God but Allah. He is one, and he has no associate. So again, here what I just read begins with the clause, Allah, who hath not taken unto himself a son. Okay, so multiple places within and without the Dome of the Rock that take up this debate between Islam and Christianity concerning the deity of Jesus, okay, in which Islam resoundingly rejects outright that Jesus in any way is the Son of God, or that there's any such thing as a Trinity. And this is very important because in the next episode, Jesus plays a central role in the end of the age. Okay, Jesus, and I'll mention this, and this will be part of our focus in the next episode. Jesus returns to earth and denounces the Christians for having ever treated him as a deity or making him into the Son of God. This is a very central belief about the end times and final days, the final act, basically, of the age, according to Islam's eschatology. But I'm not going to cover that, folks, until the next video. I've already covered enough. So, to understand Islam's beliefs concerning the end times, we first had to come to a knowledge of Islam's past in Jerusalem and its polemic with Christianity concerning the deity of Jesus Christ. The story continues in the next episode, but for now, folks, I'm going to bid you adieu and wish you a phenomenal weekend. This is Steve, the tour guide, signing off. And if you want to follow me, okay, or follow a blog or updates, you can do so on the site called Ko-fi, whose link I attach to the description of every video below the video. And of course, if you wish, you can treat Steve the tour guide via that same site to a cup of coffee. Speaking of which, I'm going to go make one right now. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.